Good evening. This is David Anderson, and we're
Take two.
Take two.
That's it. Get me Mark Hamill.
We'll do it live. Good evening. This is David and Gene and Roger, a Siskel and Ebert podcast. I'm David Anderson, and with me, as always, is Mr. David Lawler. How are you this evening?
Come up here. How's it going?
He's dealing with his cat.
Oh, she's going into the sink. You know, she always does that. She always goes into the sink and starts like drinking dishwater, and I try to stop her, and she just won't stop.
Cleans out the system.
I guess. I don't know. She seems really healthy. How are you?
We
just have a few spirited conversations. We were talking about Trump and Stormy Daniels, and then we were talking about The Last Jedi on Blu-ray, and now we're talking about...
We're all like pissed off and angry, so let's talk about something we probably both agree on, the Back to the Future movies.
Okay, Back to the Future, right? Yeah, these are all three movies. This is kind of like a Frankenstein kind of a hodgepodge of an episode where David sent me clips from separate episodes of At the Movies and whatever, At the Movies, and where they talked about Back to the Future when it came out in 85, then Back to the Future Part 2, which came out in 89, and then Back to the Future Part 3, which came out in 1990. So it was really nice to go back, because I remember this is a movie I always enjoy, and it's a one that I saw multiple viewings. You know, I mean, it's like movies were so good back then and so cheap that you could just go to the movies. It wasn't like a thing.
Well, yeah, and this is a movie. This is kind of the way movies were, at least at this particular. There's kind of the end of this era, but a movie would open, and this would have like a really good sized opening. I think like about like a $15 million opening or something. But then like the next weekend it would make like 12, and then the next weekend it would make 13, and then the next weekend it would make 11, and then the next weekend it would make 10, and then it would continue to play. After about like 4 months, it would still be playing.
Right.
Like it would, and then it would have like a $2 million weekend, and then it would have a $3 million.
Now, can you imagine? I mean,
like
this movie had a $19 million budget. It made almost $400 million.
That's the way movies played then. I remember I saw it at sort of my local, not there anymore, like way not there anymore, theater. It was kind of a rundown theater, and it was playing in the big theater. Saw it at least 2 times in there. It played there forever. Then it kind of made the second string theater like about 9 months later.
Now, okay, and also this movie played well into 1986 as well, because I remember we went in. This is Sam's Place, my beloved Sam's Place that I'm always talking about. I went in. I knew somebody who was kind of dishonest, because this was a different kind of movie theater. It wasn't like what we have now. We walked out of Back to the Future and walked into The Fly. So we saw 2 movies. For roughly, I guess, I want to say $2. That's how much the ticket cost was.
Yeah,
he just walked in, and I was like, "You can." I don't think you can do that.
Video then. Well, it almost would have had to be on video then, because it came out on video, and I remember, and we talked about this on our video program. I think it's the one that you can't find on YouTube because of copyright issues, but it came out on video like in May of 86, and this came out like in June of 85.
It came out in July, but this was winter. So this was like the beginning of 86. But it was still playing at that theater. And people were still...
You sure it was The Fly? Because
it was
The Fly
absolutely
came
The
out
Fly,
in the summer of 86. Fly came out in summer 86.
Well, it was there. It was playing. It was there. I will never forget that experience, because I was like, can you do this? This doesn't seem legal to me. It seems like we should go and buy a ticket. I was very naive. But this was also a friend of mine who smoked in the theater openly, and nobody, I mean, like he didn't get caught or anything.
Are we talking full Cape Fear?
Well, no, I mean, I guess maybe this kid was like, he either didn't care, or he was, I mean, like maybe he was a little wiser than his age would reveal. But yeah, I mean, it was like that.
This came out in tape in May 86, and it would be like on a special like Scotch hi-fi tape.
Also, that's not barring the fact, just because it was released on video doesn't mean it can still be playing in theaters.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we were still in that sort of netherworld of like not everybody had a VCR, so it might have still been playing in the theaters up until like literally like summer 86.
Okay, so
yeah, I would not be surprised. It probably would have been near the end of it, at the very end of its run.
So Gene Siskel introduces the movie. He enjoyed it. He calls it one of the best pictures of the year. Yeah. Now I have he
hails it as basically like a new classic.
What's interesting is that Danny Peary, in his book Guide for the Film Fanatic, one of my favorite books of movie criticism, calls it a clever Oedipal comedy, which it is kind of an Oedipal comedy. meaning basically kind of like the son almost has sex with his mother.
Along with a very different Prizzi's Honor, this is my favorite film of the summer movie season. If I had the ability to make lighthearted pictures for the teen and young adult market, I'd hope I'd have the ability to make a film as enjoyable as Back to the Future. I really think it's that good. Back to the Future is a time travel movie, a category I usually hate because, you know, they're never really going to change things when they go back in the past, because that would mean that the future that we saw at the beginning of the film would have had to have been a lie, right? So there's no suspense there. But, and I won't dare say how, Back to the Future managed to beat that problem, and it fooled me and it delighted me in so doing. The time travel comes about when a high school kid played Michael J. Fox from the TV show Family Ties bumps into his good friend, a wacky scientist, at the local mall.
Doc! Marty! You made it! Yeah! Welcome to my latest experiment. This is the big one, the one I've been waiting for all my life.
And, of course, the experiment is the time travel, and I love that touch, the DeLorean motor car, as we see right there.
A car that was ahead of its time.
Very good, Rod. That was Christopher Lloyd as the scientist, and he's pretty good in a convincing variation on Jerry Lewis's Nutty Professor. This time machine does work. It transports young Marty back to 1955, to before he was born, to where he wants to set up a date, it turns out, between, get this, his mother-to-be and his father-to-be.
Well, the thing that saves him was the mom realizes this is gross, and she doesn't really know why, but she's like, it's like kissing my brother.
Kissing my brother.
I gotta get the fuck out of here.
They show
it's the perfect out of like, how do we resolve this? We can't. And then it was like so well written. And so
it is
well
very.
Made, and actually,
it was written by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, and they were a writing team for a long time. And they wrote, among other things, they wrote 1941 for Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, they come up with batshit insane ideas.
Used Cars with Kurt Russell.
Used Cars, and it's like, when I think about like part 2, and we'll get to that. That seems more of a Zemeckis and Gale movie. Not that this isn't great, but this is like them at the top of their game, and like focused and honed in, probably by Spielberg, because Spielberg produced.
Well, they were
one.
writing together for years. I saw their name on. There's a show that I watch on MeTV that is one of my absolute favorites, classics, a very influential TV show starring Darren McGavin called Kolchak the Night Stalker, and it was made in 1975, and they wrote an episode of it.
Oh,
so I mean, like, they were always around writing.
There was a controversy about this movie where when we were making it, it originally starred Eric Stoltz.
That's right. There's a couple of scenes
because they wanted Michael J.
There
Fox.
were a couple of
for some
scenes
reason they couldn't get him.
I think in the shooting order they shot the scene with the reveal of the DeLorean, the first time machine test that they did with the dog, and then there was a scene they were about to see. So I guess they shot all the scenes in the parking lot. No, this movie was not shot that way. This movie was shot almost in sequence. Like, if they just went to one set after another, did their scenes, and they were done. And then there was a scene, I believe, where Eric Stoltz, playing Marty McFly, recognizes a younger version of his father in the diner. And I think that's all they shot.
I'm pretty sure they reshot some stuff, but there were some, like a lot of things they just didn't have to reshoot. And they had him. I mean, this was.
But Eric Stoltz is in the movie. He is in the movie in one very brief shot.
There's one shot when he hits Biff, like, because the guy playing him, his weight kind of fluctuates throughout the movie because of how they filmed it in structure. And I think he was trying to bulk up or something. So it's like the scene when he shoots with Eric Stoltz, he's a little thinner, and then they cut to him and he's a little bulkier and bigger, which actually works better for the character. But I think that, this is the sort of thing where it's like. They had, this was going to be this is Universal's big summer movie, a big summer movie that cost $19 million, which is funny. But it's like, this is
actually
what
I think
movie.
Is that I don't think they think that they thought the movie was going to be as big. I think that what they were hoping for was that it would be a sleeper hit. Back then, I mean, like a movie studio would make a movie and then give it. Movies had a much longer life in the theater, so.
I think that their thought was, because
I think that Back to the Future Part 2 was the franchise movie, was the movie where they're going to sell everything.
I think they did think that, like, okay, Steven Spielberg is producing. Spielberg could do no wrong at this time. Remember, he's coming off of as producer. He's coming off of Gremlins. which was a huge hit.
Zemeckis was his protege, pretty much.
It's basically the 1, 2, 3 punch. It's Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom, Gremlins, and then this comes out. Like this is, he may have produced other movies.
Well, yeah, he got his Spielberg stank on it, so yeah, and he was printing money
but it's
back then.
They didn't get to like Michael J. Fox to probably like winter of like late '84.
I wanted to talk a little bit about Michael J. Fox because looking at him in the movie, he's so not a leading man to me. I mean, like watching him in the movie, he doesn't have that leading man quality. He's very. I think he's very geeky. He's very geeky in the movie because he's a very small guy. He's got a high voice. He's walking around constantly shaking his hands.
No, see, he's a sort of a teenage. He's kind of, he's not really a teenager. He's like in his mid-20s around this time, but he's small, so he comes across as this very smart, wise, somewhat certainly out of his element.
But he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who would turn heads. I mean, I don't see him being like some kind of a sexy guy.
He's got a charisma. He's got whatever that is. And I wouldn't say lead. I'm not going to say maybe leading man, but it's like when you see someone in a movie or something, it's like they have that, whatever that is.
I think he plays the teenager fine, and I think maybe he does a little better as a leading man in movies like, say, Doc Hollywood or what's that other one, The Hard Way that John Badham directed, or The Frighteners. I really enjoyed him in The Frighteners. This is like some of the things that he does. It's like I can believe Eric Stoltz a little bit more, I think, than I can believe Michael J. Fox.
Oh, really?
Because Eric Stoltz has a quality to him, and
his gravitas.
It was completely wrong for the role, at least as far as Zemeckis was concerned, because for some reason he brought a dramatic element to it, like a more dramatic.
Yeah, this is almost a.
He's less
comedy.
of a natural. He's less of a natural comedian than Michael J. Fox.
It's a tightly written screwball comedy.
Yeah. Now, they both agree they love the movie. Ebert says the movie reminds him of It's a Wonderful Life. It doesn't remind me of that at all, because It's a Wonderful Life has a deeper message than Back to the Future. Back to the Future is a lot of fun, but I do have some problems with it, and I was wondering if you could help me out. I wrote up a little list of my problems with Back to the Future. I love the movie,
all right,
but these are just a couple of problems I've always had with the movie.
Okay.
Number one, his family really doesn't have a terrible life at the beginning of the movie. Number two, they live in a nice house. Number three, Marty has his own room. Number four, they can afford Calvin Klein products. And I know that this has got to be stickler with people in our generation. Calvin Klein products were extremely expensive. Number five, apparently a happy, successful life involves money. And this was one of the issues that Crispin Glover had with the movie as a whole. At the end, he liked the movie, but he took Robert Zemeckis aside and said, you're kind of sending a message here that apparently the only way a family can be happy or successful is if they have material wealth. And I'm a little uncomfortable with that. And Zemeckis looked at him like he was out of his fucking mind for saying that. And I kind of agree with that.
Let me pick this up. Let me pick this apart for you because I kind of see where you're coming from.
Well, first, before you do, I just want to compare my life in 1985. We did not live in a nice house. Right. I did have my own room sometimes. We couldn't afford Calvin Klein products, and we weren't terribly happy. Okay, but
so you're saying
I'm
were
just
born a poor black child?
Well, yes, I was born a sharecropper's child. But if there was any privilege, it wasn't white. But I just that's I wasn't comparing my life as a child to Marty McFly's life as a child or whatever. But I was looking at the way they live in a nice neighborhood. They live in a kind of a planned community.
It's a little run down, but yeah.
He has his own room. He's got Calvin Klein.
Okay, I can address a lot of this, okay, and it's actually just coming to me right now.
Okay, but most importantly, the final point that I made, the final point.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
You could say things monetarily, things I would say didn't improve for him that much.
He gets a nice Toyota pickup truck.
He gets a nice Toyota pickup truck, but it's like the Toyota pickup truck symbolizes that it's like his father was not necessarily like the richest guy, but he was successful in his field. So he was able to buy slightly nicer things. It's a slightly nicer version. And it represents because...
Right, you agree then. You agree that their life wasn't really that shitty to begin with.
No, that wasn't.
The point...
It was shitty, but it was shitty because, okay, so he had a pretty decent life, but he was basically Biff's bitch.
Okay, yeah, okay. So that's the point.
Like it was like he lives okay, but it's at the expense of Biff is now your boss.
So
Biff is up your ass all the time.
Okay, so wait a second. So the real point of the movie is on two fronts. It's to make George McFly more brave and courageous, and on the second point, to make Biff George McFly's bitch. Because at the end he's waxing his car. He's like, I got you. I got the.
He is, but he isn't. He's like, it almost like leveled the playing field. Okay, now, like when you've dealt with people that you don't like that bullied you, wouldn't you love to see them waxing your car?
Oh yeah. No, I did. If I was 15 years old, I would want that. Now I'm not so sure. I'm an adult. I put away childish things. I don't want that kind of revenge on people. Sometimes I think in the back of my head, boy, it would be nice if they were, gang raped by escaped chimpanzees on crack cocaine or angel dust.
Sort of Death Wish 3 kind of,
something like that. I mean, like
I'm thinking like,
but that's my lizard brain talking. My lizard brain wants that. My adult male brain doesn't care.
But remember, this is for all intents and purposes, it is a screwball comedy. So it is a little more broad. It's broad. It's broad, yet it's focused.
But it's simplistic in its desire, and also there's an inconsistency with how is Marty so brave when he has such jellyfish for parents? I mean, it's like sort of like that. Some things don't add up.
Marty is just along for the ride. He's just trying to fix all these mistakes. That's the whole point. And that's kind of the whole point of the whole movie is, oh shit, because he kind of like has an initial reaction.
Well, okay,
to,
all right. But
Doc's
what I enjoy,
shit.
But what I enjoy about the movie is more the culture clash between a kid from 1985 and a kid in 1955. I did not enjoy Biff. I did not enjoy the attempted rape of his mother. I did not enjoy his mother thinking her own son, soon-to-be son, would be hot. Like I said, there's a classic. I love this movie. This is something. This is like The Godfather for me. It's like a movie that I can put on and just watch to the end because I love it. And I can't wait. I'm going to show it to my daughter, and I hope she loves it too.
Yeah, so do I. And maybe you'll show her the sequels.
Yeah, maybe. The sequels are completely different animals, though.
Yeah. Speaking of sequels, when it ends. When they go off in the time machine and it kind of goes, they go through the thing and it goes to white. In the theatrical version, it did not say to be continued. In the home video version, they added to be continued.
Oh, so they pulled a little Lucas there and just sort of retconned it?
They pulled a little retro. Although I could swear, because I saw it twice, I could swear.
Yeah, actually, you know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. Because I remember it's your kids, Marty. We got to do something about your kids. One of your daughters marries a colored man.
That is scary. I think
that's a joke from Family Guy.
The edit point, I swear that there was like, it may have just been the print I saw, but it was like a very sort of, it almost looks snipped.
Well, yeah, okay, like I can see that because no one foresaw a sequel. It was just meant to.
It is very. If you do nothing, it's self-contained.
It is self-contained. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but of course. You're dealing with time paradoxes, and then that's when you get into your complicated time travel problems that you're going to have. I mean, like, I just watched an episode of Voyager last night where the Federation has time ships in the 29th century, and they keep sending 7 of 9 back to Voyager at a specific time before a bomb goes off. And she keeps messing up, and they keep sending her back until she gets horribly ill. So, I mean, it's like you're always dealing with time paradoxes no matter what.
But her breasts always look perfect.
Oh, God.
So that's what's important.
Oh, my Lord. I'm sorry. What were we talking about?
That's okay.
Oh, right. Okay. Back to
the Future part. We're going to go to Back to the Future part. We're going to go into their review for Back to the Future part 2.
Yes. Is this still at the movies or is it Siskel and Ebert?
It's now Siskel and Ebert and the movies. It's now the Disney.
So Ebert introduces Back to the Future Part 2, calling it a convoluted comedy. The movie has fun with its vision of the future.
Our first movie is Back to the Future Part 2, and this is one of the goofiest movies I've seen in a long time. A convoluted comedy about 2 time travelers who mess up the future and go back to the past to try to patch things up and make them come out right. The movie once again stars Michael J. Fox as the bewildered hero and Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown, who has invented a time travel machine and now brings Fox to the year 2015 for a quick fix on the life of his son.
God, he looks just like me. Within 2 hours of his arrest, Martin McFly Jr. was tried, convicted, and sentenced to 15 years in the state penitentiary? Within 2 hours?
The justice system works swiftly in the future now that they've abolished all lawyers.
The movie has fun with its vision of the future, including three-dimensional holographic movie ads.
Shark still looks fake.
Fox causes lots of trouble when he gets a sports almanac and realizes he could travel back in time and win lots of money on sports bets.
Marty!
I can't lose.
Marty, up here!
Tragedy strikes when Fox's archenemy steals the sports magazine, goes back in time, becomes a millionaire, and in the new future marries Fox's mother.
Mom? Mom, that can't be you.
Oh, yes, it's me, Marty. Are you all right?
I'm fine. It's just that you're so big.
And so Fox and the Mad Professor have to go back in time once again to try to steal the almanac before the bad guy can start using it so the present will return to the way it ought to be. And if you're confused, so am I, and that's one of the charms of this movie, as the characters shuttle back and forth trying to do a patch-up job on the tides of destiny.
There are a couple of creepy little things here, like... do you remember the whole thing about the Cubs winning the World Series in 2015? According to Back to the Future Part 2. Didn't happen in 2015, but they came very, very close. But they lost. They were swept in 4 games by the New York Mets, and we were very happy about that. And the Mets went to the World Series, but didn't win. The Cubs wound up winning the World Series the next year.
Yes, they did.
So this was incredibly creepy that they would nail it with that much accuracy.
I'm telling you, they nail all kinds of things. They're almost slightly off, almost like Nostradamus, where they're slightly off. I mean, we could say like Cubs win World Series 2016. Biff becomes president in 2016.
Yeah.
I could have a political. We already had that conversation on another show that may or may
I
not
don't know.
air.
For some
He was
reason,
based on
Biff
Donald
seems
Trump, though.
smarter than Trump.
This guy, they said that this guy was based on Donald Trump. It was like, what if Donald
What
Trump
if Donald
became
Trump?
president?
I'm going to do this and beat up Marty McFly.
Yeah.
Now, we saw Back to the Future Part 2 in the movies toward the end of its run, I think. And sorry, I just belched a little there while I was talking. Tried to swallow that one. So what happened? I was completely confused by the movie watching it in the theater. I had to watch it a couple of times later on video and on cable to get, because it's, and Ebert was too. Ebert says he was confused by the movie. Not as good as the original. It steals and duplicates scenes from the original movie.
That's what makes it cool.
And then the vision of the future is very interesting because it kind of has it's a very plausible future. It's kind of like Blade Runner, but not as depressing. It's like Blade Runner filled with kind of fun amusements and lots of product placement going on.
Yeah, you know what it looks like? It kind of looks like they went into the 90s. It's very colorful and pastels and shiny and everything. It just kind of reminds me of like.
But there's a lot of fun
90s
stuff in there. Like, how about the self-tying shoes and stuff like that? I mean, like
self-tying shoes.
But again, this is where all the product placement comes into it. They didn't have as much product placement in the first movie, so they went nuts with this one. They had Nike, they had Pepsi, they had Spielberg movies like Jaws.
Jaws 19, directed by Max Spielberg, says right on there.
And so I mean, there's a lot of fun stuff, and there's also still the retro feel. Like there's a 50s style cafe in it, which I thought was really cute.
When he arrives in the future, when they're in that alley, there's like laser discs packed in boxes, like they're being thrown away or something. I guess
that's another one of the weird prophecies of the movie that people talk about a lot. Siskel calls it gadget filled with a lot of racing around. Biff is more of a central character in this movie. He dominates the action of the movie, they say.
Because they couldn't get Crispin Glover because there was a whole
and Crispin Glover sued
about like how he wanted a little more money and he wanted to put some ideas in or whatever.
Yeah,
we'll just replace you with a guy.
This was kind of an underhanded tactic that they did. They latexed his face and created a mold of his face for makeup effects, I guess, with Crispin Glover to make him look older in the first movie. They didn't hire him for the second movie, so they used that mold to create.
They used that mold. They used that make put him on somebody else.
And Crispin Glover sued because it's against. It was against the law.
He actually changed the rules for that. They can't do that.
So I mean, like Crispin Glover, we can we can often mock him, especially for his appearance on Late Night with David Letterman, where he was wearing the platform shoes. And Letterman's reaction, it's very rare that you see Letterman get unraveled by somebody, but he was completely unraveled by Crispin Glover. But
I don't have these...
You seem to be distraught.
They don't...
You seem to be distraught.
People try to make me sound a lot weird, and
Yeah.
I'm strong, I'm strong. I can arm wrestle. Do you want to arm wrestle?
No.
I've been taking... I've been taking part. These aren't mine. I can kick.
Okay. I'm going to go check on the top 10. Excuse me. I'll be back. Okay. Welcome back to the show. We're running a little short of time tonight. I would have loved to have chatted more with Crispin Glover, but I understand he had a cab to catch, and well, traffic this time of night here in Midtown is pretty brutal, so we wanted to ensure every possibility that he would get wherever he was going on time. Did you enjoy that, Paul?
It was an interesting segment.
Yeah. I think that's the first time we've been doing the show that a guest actually tried to kick me.
Well, I think it was a conceptual piece.
Well, he came very close to denting my head with those giant shoes, so I thought, I don't need that. I'm 40. I went to college. I've had a number of... I don't need... That is not how I want my life ended. Some goofball, some dork from wherever... Oh, stop it. Stop it. Yeah. You want to have dinner with the guy?
Crispin Glover is, he's really good in this remake of Willard. If you ever saw that one.
Great movie. He's a very, very talented actor. The River's Edge, I remember him in that.
He seems to have found the proper medication. So he's a little more.
He's
calm
a fine,
now.
he's a fine actor and a very interesting experimental film director too.
On the later Blu-rays, they interview a lot of I think they mostly interview Bob Gale on the sort of the newer DVDs, where he kind of talks about the situation, and he kind of. According to Crispin Glover, he kind of lies,
but
about what happened.
There are court records, to back up Crispin Glover's claims. Okay, so Ebert recommends the movie because he says it's still a fun movie to watch. Siskel calls it really just confusing. They argue about this. They actually argue about this at the end of the clip where they're arguing. They argued also about Back to the Future 3, which we'll get into in a minute, but their argument seemed to stem around, I guess, the merits of the story as opposed to how it was edited. And it did seem, at least from the first time I saw it, I was confused watching it because I had no idea who was who. You had different versions of Marty McFly running around, different versions of... But then they wind up... I forget what happens. The girlfriend is different. The girlfriend is Elizabeth Shue this time around. Yeah. And then the third movie.
With a really shitty wig.
Well, they had to make her look like the other girl who... They did
not succeed. And also, Elizabeth Shue... She's coming off of Adventures in Babysitting and Cocktail. She's kind of getting up on there on the B+
She's getting
list.
up on the
she
there.
Be just a girlfriend.
I think what it was, the original actress was contracted to do the second and third movies.
She was having some issues at home.
Her family, a member of her family was dying of cancer.
Yeah,
so she had to be with that person or something. Couldn't really do this,
which makes sense. Hey, it's a movie.
But she never went back. I don't think she ever went back to acting after that, though. Like I said, it's fun to look at. The movie is very fun to look at. It is not on the level of the first movie, though.
No, it's like I always feel like this is the sort of movie where it's like it's not the best, but it might be my favorite.
It's a competent sequel.
Yeah, but what makes it so cool is they basically say, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about Last Jedi. It's got some fuck yous in it. It basically says, oh, this movie that you've seen 5,000 times that everybody loves, we're going to go back up in it and fuck with it.
Yeah, they kind of do. They kind of go and erase a
That's
couple of things.
insane.
He winds up back in 1955. He has to redo the whole thing with the lightning bolt and the gigawatts and all that stuff.
Well, doesn't he say, you're not going to believe this. We got to go back to 1955.
Right after.
I don't believe
it. Okay, right after the Doc gets the lightning bolt to get the DeLorean back to 1985. Marty comes back around the corner and says, Doc. And then the Doc passes out. And then
Back from the Future. Yeah, that's genius too. Now, of course, it doesn't quite match up because everybody's seen that movie so many times. It doesn't quite match up, but it's close enough. But it promises. Like, in fact, if you saw it in the theater, and maybe it's the same way when you watch it on video now, they put a little Back to the Future 3 trailer on it.
Yeah, that's
fully scored. It's like at the
that is what I remember from the movie. At the end of the movie, when it says that I am living here, I'm successfully living in like 1885. So he's fine. Now, is that at the beginning or the end of the movie?
Okay, at the end of the movie, here's what happens. Marty vanquishes Biff, who gets knocked into manure again. So that's funny. They've burned the almanac, which is the whole plot of the thing of where Biff got an almanac in the future.
Right. Now I remember. Michael J. Fox has to go to the old Doc Brown's house again. And that's where Back to the Future Part 2 ends. It does say to be continued or to be concluded. I'm not sure.
No, it says it says because you're right. Back to the Future is to be continued. This says to be concluded.
And it shows a couple of scenes from
Back to the Future Part 3
that they've shot. with the train and everything.
They must have shot a good chunk of it before the movie came out.
Yeah, it was shot back to back.
It came out in Christmas, and then it was like November, actually, about Thanksgiving. I remember '89, and I remember when this movie came out because it had a massive opening, and then, like, I guess word of mouth, people just were not having it, and it dipped immediately. Like, it had like a $40-some million opening, but it only made like $108 million, like basically half what the original made.
Yeah. Well, actually, total box office here, it says 332.
Well, that's worldwide.
And I'm not sure whether the budget is combined with Back to the Future Part 3.
Probably part of it. I'm going to guess a much larger budget. Probably in the 50s.
They're both $40 million movies.
Maybe like 80. Probably like I think I read something like it's $80-some million for both. So like 40-some each.
So they just sort of chopped the budget in half for both movies.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we move on to Back to the Future Part 3.
Yes.
Where Marty winds up back in the past. He's in 1955. Now I remember the beginning of the movie because it's a rainy night. They're both asleep. They, and then they're both trying to figure out what the hell they're going to do. He needs to go to 1885 to do something. What? To get the DeLorean?
Okay, he has to. Okay, yeah. Here's what happens. So in that letter, Emmett Brown says, "Don't come and get me. I'm perfectly okay here in 1885. I'm going to live out my life. I'm doing great.
Yeah.
I've buried the DeLorean in this cave, and you can here's a list of parts that you're going to need in 1955 to put it back together, and then you can go back to the future in 1985 and then destroy it. That's what I want you to do."
Wait, how does he wind up in how does he get to 1885?
He got hit by lightning. He's in the flying in Back to the Future Part 2. It's still the storm.
No.
It's the storm.
I'm asking, how did Marty get back to the Old West?
Oh, okay. So they fix the DeLorean. The reason he goes back in time and doesn't just go ahead in time, go to 1985 and destroy it. The reason he does that is because as they're taking it out, they see in like a cemetery, he walks over the grave of Doc Brown, and it says, "Shot in the back by Buford Tannen over the matter of $80."
Oh, okay. All right.
And so he's like, "What the hell is this?" So they go to the records, and it says that there was a scuffle, and that Doc Brown was shot. And it's literally like shot like 3 days after he wrote that letter. He says, "I'm going to go back in time and I'm going to save you."
Right.
So that's why he goes back in time, to save Doc from being shot by Buford Tannen.
Our next film is Back to the Future Part 3, a most satisfying conclusion to the action comedy series about time travel. I really liked the original film. I thought the second was dull as dishwater, but number 3 is just fine as Michael J. Fox and his scientist friend Christopher Lloyd wind up back in the Old West of 1885. And thanks to his expertise with video games, Michael J. Fox proves to be an expert marksman at a Western town carnival.
Listen, can I try that again? Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, just tell me one thing. Where did you learn to shoot like that?
7-Eleven.
Part 3 also brings back some of the adult emotions of the original film as Christopher Lloyd falls in love with a school teacher played by the always delightful Mary Steenburgen.
I think a lens may be out of alignment because if you move it this way, the image turns fuzzy. See? But if you turn it the other way, then
everything becomes clear.
They're great together. Naturally, there is a six-gun showdown in the movie as Michael J. Fox angers the local tough guy who doesn't like his nickname.
You're Mad Dog Tannen.
Mad Dog. I hate that name. I hate it. You hear? Nobody calls me Mad Dog. Especially not some duded up, egg-sucking gutter trash.
And they do have a shootout in the street in the western town at the not at high noon, at low 8 o'clock. Those scenes each work on their own, but they are made more special because the characters are fiddling with the past and possibly influencing the future. Back to the Future Part 3 looks great. It's obvious that they have spent tens of the millions of dollars they made with this series. Gorgeous western settings. I love a nostalgic shot of Mary Steenburgen, remember, in a beautiful purple dress standing next to that green train, green railroad car. Top flight writing and fine performances all around.
So, but basically the plot is he's going back. He went back to 1885. He was supposed to go to 1985 and then destroy the time machine and let everybody just live their life. Right. But he decides to go back in time to save Doc because he's going to be shot by Buford Tannen, and he doesn't want that. And somehow future
Doc Brown is he's just a trouble magnet everywhere he goes.
Yeah. And
he calls himself Clint Eastwood. His name is Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, Clint Eastwood, yeah. Through sort of a contrivance of events, they end up saving Claire Clayton Ravine.
Right. Yeah.
Which is like she was supposed to have been a teacher that fell. So he's like already changing the future too much already. And somehow Marty becomes the Doc that's going to get shot by Buford Tannen.
Right.
Like somehow, because they meet Buford, Mad Dog Tannen, played again by Tom Wilson, playing basically Biff again, but in the Old West. Yes. And but they figure that out, and then they're like, they were going to go into the future like immediately, but they couldn't because the gas tank got hit with an arrow. When he shows up in 1885, there's like an Indian, sort of like they're like he's being chased by Indians, which I don't think you could do this now.
No.
Get pissed. But
indigenous or second spirit.
The gas tank. So he can't get up to 88 miles an hour to do the flux capacitor because the gas tank doesn't work, and they can't fill it with gas. They can't even make gas, which makes no sense.
Yes. They have to use a train, right? They have to use a train to push the DeLorean. I remember that.
Although he probably could have paid.
No, I remember. Okay, I remember really liking this movie because I could follow the story. It's much more, point A to point B. And also, I mean, I thought it was a charming love story because of that. So I considered it better than Part 2. Now, Siskel liked the movie, but Ebert didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't like it as much as Siskel did because he said...
Not much happens.
Yeah,
because not much happens.
They argue.
They get in the Old West, nothing happens.
They argue about whether the movie is good or would be as good as a standalone Western or something like that. It's full of cliches. Yeah. It's pedestrian. It looks like it's shot on a Western movie set, and they argued about that. Mm-hmm. So, but I did enjoy the movie. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I liked Mary Steenburgen. It was nice to see her in another time travel romance, like with Time After Time. Remember that movie, of course.
It does feel like it. I mean, it's a good looking movie. But it's like it doesn't have. Like the first one is this sort of tightly scripted. It's almost like a perfect movie, even though it's a very
Back to the Future is a very high concept kind of a screenplay that writers write.
The second one I love because it's batshit insane.
It's crazy. It's completely out of its mind.
Whereas the third one is like, it's okay. So it's like
it's more. This movie is more Doc Brown's movie.
I would probably give both Part 2 and Part 3 like thumbs up. Like I'd probably give Part 2 like 3 stars because it's not as good as the original, but still like batshit insane, but awesome. Yeah. Whereas Part 3 is like, it's good enough.
It's good enough. It's good enough to close the story. It closes the story.
Closes the story.
And that's the end.
But the first one I probably might give 3.5, 4 stars because that's like it's just a tighter movie. But still got to say part 2 is probably my favorite of the 3 just because it's so out of its damn mind. I love that. It's like it's a time travel movie and they have fun with it.
I would agree. I like all 3 of these movies. I wouldn't mind having the trilogy on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Although, from what I understand, I mean, there's a lot of information that's cut because the movies were shot in full frame. So they were matted for Blu-ray, so you're missing a lot of things.
You're missing, but it's like it was framed.
Like, for instance,
to be
there's an adult bookstore or something that you don't see in the town because it's cut at the top and bottom. And when you look at it 4:3, you can actually see the adult bookstore there.
Oh.
So I
have to go back.
Yeah. If you can find the 4:3. I also wanted to mention that this was the first movie that we came across that we could not dub because it had copy guard on it, so we weren't able to dub it. I was very upset about that.
Yeah, that's right. It was basically the coming out of Macrovision. I mean, it had been tested on a few titles, but this was where they're like, this has Macrovision on it. Don't fuck with us.
Yeah.
Because when it came out on video, it was a big deal.
It has been David and Gina Rogers, Siskel and Ebert podcast. This is the final episode of the season. We'll be back in a few months, I guess, with some new stuff. Like, what are we gonna do? Lethal Weapon or some shit like that?
We're gonna mix it up. We're gonna shake it up. We're gonna stir it up.
Shake it up.
We're gonna have fun with it. Maybe we'll do the Back to the Future Part 2 of this podcast, and we'll go back into Siskel and Ebert's past. And we'll make sure that they're both not born or something, and then we'll take over.
Okay.
And who knows? But we will be back. Hopefully, nobody will die. Nobody will get shot in the back by Mad Dog Tannen over a matter of $80.
I'm going to make a wild prediction. The Mets are 11-1 right now, and they're going to win the World Series this year. Mark my words.
Oh,
the Cubs won't even make it in.
Mark the words of Charles Fleischer, the voice of Roger Rabbit, in a lot of makeup.
Okay. All right. Good night.
Good night.